Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Peterpodcast. I'm your host, reporter Taylor Clydesdale, and with me today is Gianne Broughton. Gianne Broughton is the Green Party candidate for the Peterborough-Kawartha riding, and she's in the election right now. She's going to be talking with me today about the Green Party's platform.
I see the Green Party platform as covering all the needs of the province and doing that in such a way that we minimize our impact on the environment. So it's not so much about, it's not that turtles are more important than people.
And we're also going to be discussing, just in general, a green economy and what the Green Party stands for. So, hope you enjoy the show.
Great. So my name is Gianne Broughton. I'm the local candidate for the Green Party of Ontario, and really excited about being able to present a program that can really help us get out of the mess we're in. That's, in fact, why I'm so passionate about being the candidate.
So what kind of mess are we in right now, then?
Well, the story I usually tell is about the environmental crisis, and particularly about the crisis relating to the production of oxygen. Oxygen is produced by plants and fungi on land and by the plankton in the ocean. 30% of the oxygen that we breathe is produced by the plankton in the ocean. And because of global warming and other types of pollution, the ocean is getting a little bit more acid every day. And at some point, the plankton are going to realize that they really can't live in acid anymore. And overnight, we'll have a cascade of death of plankton, and very shortly after that, it will be difficult for us to breathe.
So the platform that the Green Party is running on is based on that idea that, we're kind of on a time limit right now?
Exactly, absolutely. And what we have now is, what we had 10 years ago was the high carbon economy, and what we have now is the slightly less high carbon economy. And we have to get to the low carbon economy. And what we have to do in order to get there is to make sure that we are paying people to make the transitions, that is, to do the work that will make that transition. So we want to arrange the economy in such a way that there are natural incentives to hire people to do the things that we need to do to get that transition done.
So I absolutely want to dive more into the Green Party's platform, but first, before that, I want to talk a little bit about yourself, because as much as you elect parties, you also elect people.
You're so right. And myself, I'm very motivated by ideas. So that's what I'm ready to talk about.
Yeah, so let's talk. So what makes you qualified to be a candidate in this election and to potentially also be the MPP for this riding?
So one of the standard things that people need to know about qualifications is education, and I have a master's degree in rural planning and development from Guelph. I have had a lot of experience in community development here in Ontario, and also handling international development projects for the Quakers. In those cases, I was able to witness and be part of planning for a lot of different initiatives that did exactly that, got people employed looking after the natural environment.
So it sounds like you come from a background of rural planning then.
That's right.
So, if elected into this position, there would also be, being a city, we do have some kind of denser urban areas. Mm-hmm. How do you go about planning for those areas as much as you do planning for the rural areas?
So, Peterborough isn't so big. That's why people like to come here, actually. I was speaking to someone at Market today about that. The sort of ecological planning framework for cities is about not expanding outwards, but filling in and moving upwards, and also about corridors for the movement of animals, and other kinds of protections for the environment. It's also about clustering in neighborhoods so that people don't have to get in their car to get groceries, that they can actually do it with a trundle buggy, which is my usual transportation for the groceries. And other elements of transportation with regard to, transit and helping disabled people get to where they need to go. If you have neighborhoods that cluster around service hubs, then it's just easier for everybody. Does that answer your question? I could go on for a long time, and I want things to flow a bit.
Well, then just to springboard off of that. So when, there's a lot of issues that have to do with our environment that go through, our city council, our MPP, and the province in general. But there are some issues that, on the surface level, they really don't seem to have that environmental angle. Like if you talk about something about minimum wage and the increase to $14 that we had in the new year, and then the increase to $15 next year, that doesn't seem to me to be an environmental issue. How do you tackle those types of issues?
So I think maybe this is part of that syndrome of thinking that there's something that completely separates the human from the environmental. The Green Party is a political party. It's about how people live together in their environment. So definitely we have to respect the work that the people who get paid minimum wage do. And given the cost of living in these days, that's a critical issue. They have to have a minimum wage that actually can meet their monthly requirements, their monthly expenses. I'm not sure that $15 can. I've worked for $15 an hour and less. I did some elder care kind of work, home care kind of work for a while at $11.50 an hour, and thank goodness that wasn't my only source of income.
Then let's keep talking about the cost of living and how that's affecting people and people's incomes. Because what is the Green Party's strategy then for dealing with that? Because there are a lot of people who are living in poverty in this province.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the plan has a lot to do with how to create jobs. So there's that side of it. It's not just about helping the people who don't have jobs now. It's also about increasing the supply of jobs so that the people who don't have jobs now will have something to move into. But in terms of helping the people who don't have jobs now, and the people who, for one reason or another, are not employable. So the current programs, ODSP and Ontario Works, our program would raise the levels of support within those programs to the low income cutoff, which at the moment I think is above $20,000. It depends a little bit on where you are, what the amount is, but between $20,000 and $22,000, and that's per annum. And anybody who has a disability, regardless whether or a health challenge, which is really impacting their quality of life, they should be eligible for support that they need in order to make a good quality of life, regardless whether they are actually on ODSP or Ontario Works. So that kind of health support, health technology support, and particular drugs or whatever it is that people need to have their basic quality of life should be available to anybody on a low income under that 20,000, regardless whether they've actually qualified for ODSP or Ontario Works.
Okay, so that sounds a bit like the basic income
yes,
pilot that's being taken on right now by the Liberal provincial government.
Right, so that's our idea about the basic income pilot, is that it should be allowed to complete, but we definitely want to have a basic income guarantee in place at its completion. So what I said before is kind of what we do while we're waiting for that to complete. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you afford something like that? Like, if the ultimate goal is to have, a basic income guarantee for all Ontarians. How is it that your party would be able to afford that?
So in the short term, there's several sources of revenue that have not been tapped into as they could have been. The most dramatic one is the royalty rates for natural resources. At the moment, Ontario charges the lowest natural resource royalty rates in the country. That is, we're giving away the store.
Mm-hmm. So that's the royalty rates that other countries pay when we export to.
No, any company who is extracting forest, water, aggregate, minerals, they pay a royalty to the province.
Okay.
Whether the company is based in Ontario or elsewhere, per ton or whatever the appropriate measure is for the mineral involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So our plan is to raise the royalty rates gradually. So we're not doing a big shock to the economy, but a gradual raise to the same levels that they use in Saskatchewan. So as not to price ourselves out of the market, but just to stop giving away the store.
So if you raise the royalty rates, what does that then do to the things that come from those? Like if you raise the royalty rates on lumber, does that not affect the price of housing for new builds? Would that not increase the price of houses that people are buying?
So it's actually important that the cost of natural resources reflect the cost to both the society and the environment of using them. And in the case of forest, of replacing it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are rational price rises that can occur as a result of the royalty rates going up. But it can be balanced by the fact that the companies paying a higher level of royalty will want to adapt their systems to be able to be more efficient, and they will then need to hire people who are better qualified in order to develop the systems that will make them more efficient. So there's actually more employment going to occur as a result of that as well.
Could you just explain more in depth about how that happens, about how, what would be then done to incentivize or to create that environment where businesses are becoming more efficient and where they are hiring more people? Because my brain's missing a step there, and I don't know if other people's might hearing this, but I just want to better explain how that works, how your government would do that.
So it's a natural thing that happens when the price of there's a limit to how much the market can bear in terms of increases in prices, and if you want to sort of maximize that margin there between the price that you can charge and the price that you're paying for the inputs, then you want to be more efficient in the way that you do the extraction of the inputs, so that per ton of iron that you're pulling out of the mine, you're getting more more sellable product from it.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So basically the idea is that by raising that royalty, it incentivizes businesses to then decrease their costs to compensate for that?
Right.
So what if the businesses don't decrease their costs then, and then those costs get passed on to the consumer?
So that is an important part of moving from the high carbon economy to the low carbon economy, is helping consumers recognize what things are most efficient for them to do in terms of building, renovating, whatever the thing that it is that they want to buy that is made from those minerals or wood or whatever. So we have to realize that that things are going to get more expensive because the cost of looking after the environment has not been factored into the way that our economy is structured. So there are other elements of the program that are sort of compensatory, that help people deal with their monthly expenses. For instance, we have a very rational plan for electricity. I'm just getting sort of in need of a little bit of...
Oh, no worries. I know it's a very hot day out today. It is.
And I'm afraid that I'm kind of lecturing and...
Oh, no, lecture away, please. But actually, if you don't mind, maybe if you want to take a break there, we'll continue this. We're going to take a short break.
Okay.
Roll a little commercial. We can take a few sips of our water, and then we'll get right back into it if you'd like.
Okay.
All right, sounds perfect. Then we will be back in just a moment. All right, and we're back on the Peterpodcast, and we're talking to Gianne Broughton right now, and we're talking about the Green Party's platform and kind of how the economics of creating that kind of green economy would work. But I want to say, a little while ago I had a chat with former Mayor of Peterborough, Sylvia Sutherland, in an article titled How to Run for Council. And one of the pieces of advice that she gave to me that I passed on in the article was that you can't be a single issue candidate. And I feel like a lot of people have a conception that the Green Party is a single issue platform party. Do you see that as being the case?
I see the Green Party platform as covering all the needs of the province, and doing that in such a way that we minimize our impact on the environment. So it's not so much about, it's not that turtles are more important than people, okay? It's about recognizing that the turtles are an important part of the whole community, and let's understand what they need as well as what the people need, and design so that both of us get what we need. Mm-hmm. And it is going to mean that we need to make some changes, but if we don't make them...
Yeah, so, just to compare turtles to humans, it sounds like there's a balance that your party is trying to strike with its
That's
policies. Right. So maybe let's use an example here in Peterborough, because in Peterborough we have, at Trent University, there's the Clean Tech Commons that are going in. Mm-hmm. It's a fair bit of green space that is being affected by it, because there's a lot of green space that needs to be cut out for that clean tech park to go in. So, and there's certainly there seems to be a decent section of people who disagree with that should be happening. That you shouldn't be tearing out green space to put in new development. What are your thoughts on that project? Is that something that you would let go ahead if that was a decision that you would have to make, or would there need to be a balance struck, or like what are your thoughts on that?
So I wish I was better informed as to exactly what is planned and how the design was made and how that design balances the various needs. Mm-hmm. There are things that can be done to minimize the impact of construction. And I don't know whether those are planned in or not.
What are some of those ways?
Well, the one that comes easily to mind is the kind of wildlife causeways that you can put over or under roads, just so that things can get across the road without getting smashed. Mm-hmm. And there's different ways of handling water flow. The people who do this, the environmental engineers, and over the last 20 years, they've developed a lot of practices. They are the ones who know the details of how to do that. But I know that it is possible to make some design adaptations.
Do you know if there's added costs associated with those, and if there are, are they worth it?
Definitely, they're worth it.
Okay.
And typically where there's added cost, there's added employment. So it's worth our while to do the things that strengthen our biodiversity, because we need that biodiversity to keep the oxygen level up. I mean, just to go right down to the very basics of the situation, you know?
Kind of that basic human need.
There you go. So why not employ people to do it? If it means that the price of some part of things increases, the fact that you have more people employed means that the cost to the whole community is balanced out.
So what are some of the jobs that, you know, in this kind of economy that you're hoping to create or, you know, adapt from the economy that we have now? What are some of the jobs that you're hoping are created?
So we can go into that thing about electricity here as an example. There's actually a lot of opportunities in Ontario to create medium scale and smaller scale hydroelectric power. So if you have these generating plants that are smaller scale in a whole bunch of different places, they're providing jobs in a whole bunch of different places around the province. And some of those opportunities are nearby. That's why Peterborough was set up here on the river, is because it was an opportunity to generate energy. So the question was about what are some of those jobs? And there's an example right there. Because at the moment, the way the electric grid is set up, all the jobs are concentrated around mega generating plants. And that's not the only way to do it.
So what are the types of energy that, you know, you could see on a local level supporting? Because I know we have a few solar farms here in Peterborough. I mean, we have a few dams here. We don't have any nuclear power plants here, but, you know, what kind of types of energy could you see Peterborough adopting and being proponents of those types of technology?
So there's lots of things that are already on the go here, or maybe budding but not completely blossomed yet. And we just need to keeping on with those things. My personal feeling about the mega windmills is that might not be the way to go for expanding wind generation, because I've understood that there are some detrimental effects to because of low frequency vibrations, and that comes from the fact that they're so big. And you can generate electricity from wind without going to that huge scale. You make a more lightweight, smaller windmills, and you still end up generating the electricity that you need. And of course, design is improving all the time. And whatever benefits those huge windmills had in the design environment of the time, when people knew what they knew then, there are likely to be better designs available now. So I'm saying let's review before we put in a whole lot more of those huge windmills.
Okay. So, you know, kind of the smaller new style of windmill that you could see coming out could be something that, you know, in Peterborough and in the county?
I think it fits in better with the whole environment of being in a community and having to consider the impacts beyond just where the windmill happens to be sitting.
So I do want to talk to you about, you know, we've talked a lot about environmentalism and energy generation. I want to talk to you a bit about healthcare, just because, you know, it's something that as a city with a high population of seniors, it's something that's, you know, increasingly more pressing that and people are caring more about it. Right now we're dealing with a crisis in Ontario of long hospital wait times. I think the issue has been characterized by some as hallway healthcare.
Yes.
So what would your party be doing to deal with that issue? in Ontario?
So, the hallway healthcare situation has to end. We have to have proper services for people so that they're not in danger. And what we've understood is that funding levels have to increase, but there's also an important element of predictability and projectability. Planning some distance ahead so that you're ready to take up the demand that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So we really want to make sure that healthcare is funded in a very predictable, steady, stable way, so that the people who are locally planning what they need to do can plan further ahead and can really make the adjustments that they need to make.
So how do you meet the future demand for hospitals in our healthcare system, retirement homes and hospices and all that? How do you meet the future demand when we're not currently meeting that demand now? I mean, if our hospitals are full, that means that there is a demand that is currently not being met. So how do we meet current demand and then do what you're saying that we do and find ways to meet future demand for hospitals as well?
So I'm not quite sure if I've understood your question. Are you
Sorry,
saying...
let me rephrase it. So you just talked about, understanding future demand and making sure that we meet that future demand in hospitals?
This is taking the... you begin with a increase in funding that helps you deal with the situation that you have now. But you do that increase in a whole system that's in place for the future, so that people know when they're making their adjustments now, that they can plan for that adjustment to have a long life.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like increase in funding for hospitals and for healthcare is something that's
It's definitely right there, and it's about using various previously ignored revenue sources to make sure that we can do this on a balanced budget, and also identifying a number of efficiencies. There's a long list of efficiencies listed in the vision, which is on the website. And I don't want to go into them right now, but they are identified specifically. The other thing I wanted to say about healthcare, especially long-term care, is that as people age, the kind of support they need changes. And it's not only about aging, it's about things that happen to people in life, and the kind of support they need changes. So we need to have a variety of different hubs that are looking after different levels of care. And these can be done in a kind of synergistic and cooperative way with things like nurse practitioners and community primary care hubs and that kind of thing, so that there is assistive living, not huge warehouse kind of facility, but something that is geared to the size of the neighborhood or the community where it is. And people who are in those facilities are able to have a relationship with their local community. So it's not all about just building more big facilities to provide long-term care. It's about providing a diversity and a depth of service and places to live and community interaction that fits the different needs of people, so that they can move from one to another as their needs change, or maybe they're just accessing a different level of service without moving.
Mm-hmm. So to fund that, you had said that there were previously ignored revenue sources that would be considered under a green government. What are some of those currently or previously ignored revenue sources, and how would your government tap into them?
Okay, so the example that comes to my mind isn't directly related to health. Is that okay? If
No,
we
absolutely,
move
yeah.
to something else.
Because in the end, it all comes out from the provincial coffers anyway. So.
That's right. So about transportation. So there's a gas tax, and rural communities complain that they don't get their fair share of the gas tax. And some people think that that's because a lot of the revenue from the gas tax is being used to support Toronto's transit system. So we say use things like circulation fees, parking fees, surtaxes on property that's located near transportation hubs like subway stations and so on, that Toronto should pay for itself. And then the gas tax, which is raised throughout the province, should be used throughout the province to provide transportation services like better intercity bus and train service. And as time goes on, there'll be more opportunities for things like small intertown electric transit systems. Looking, a little bit further into the future, but things that are already sort of there in Europe.
Those ways of kind of connecting rural communities.
Yes,
a little bit
exactly. So that rural people also will find that they don't need to use as much fuel. But also, it's better for their life. Help the environment, help the people, help the people, help the environment. That's what it's all about.
You sound very energized and excited by that concept of doing stuff like that with that technology.
I am. That's right. Reading the Green Party vision has actually given me new hope. I was just beavering away, teaching my students, hoping somehow we would live long enough. And now I have an idea of how we could actually make the change so that we need to make, and I'm tearing up. It really makes a difference in my life.
All right, then I think we're gonna close off there. Is there anything else that you want to add before we finish up?
I just want to thank Peterborough for being so open and friendly. I had a really good time out there canvassing and talking with people and hearing their ideas. Quite often they get me straight on something that I wasn't quite clear about. And all of that learning, we have to just bring it all together, because we're going to have something very difficult to face, and we have to be able to listen to everybody and build those partnerships that take us through and find the new solutions.
All right, I think that's a wonderful note to end on. Thank you very much for being on the show today, and to everyone else. We're just about to wrap up our political election coverage, so but we'll be back next week with some other topic.